It's officially draft season in the NBA. All the basketball junkies are able to dive into over 60 of the best young players in the world to see how they fit onto the 30 best teams in the world in their future. It's time for me to give you guys my annual mock draft, but before I go pick by pick, let's look at my big board of my top 30 prospects in this class. This is a very weird but interesting class. There's no clear-cut potential superstar, so each pick is up in the air for the first time in a very long time. On my board, I have some guys higher and lower than the general public does. I have Deron Holmes from Dayton ranked 7th ahead of a few potential lottery picks like Donovan Clingan, Matas Buzelis, and others. He's my favorite player in this draft, and I'll explain why later in this video. I also have guys like Tristan Da Silva and KJ Simpson fairly high on my board. I consider these two Colorado guys some of the more underrated players in this class, both in their own way. But on the other hand, I have players like Stephon Castle and Cody Williams lower than others do. I don't think they're as talented as some of the other guys in this class, despite what the public thinks of them. But let's get into how I think this draft should and will go pick by pick. With the first overall pick to the Atlanta Hawks, I had them selecting Zachary Richichet from France. The 6'8 forward averaged 11 points and 4 rebounds for the JL Borg in the LNB Pro A League in France. He's shown an ability to shoot as he shot 48% from 3 over his first 34 games last season. He also provides athleticism off the dribble. He's a pretty good ball handler for his size and has shown flashes to be a creator on the ball. His length will also give him a higher floor defensively and be an immediate plug-and-play guy for the Hawks. Him going number 1 has gained more steam over the past few weeks after Alex Sarr canceled his workout with Atlanta. I don't think this is a bad pick for a team hungry to win again, so time will tell for the Frenchman. At number 2, I have the Washington Wizards selecting Alex Sarr from the NBL in Australia. The 6'11 center from France averaged 9 and 4 in only 17 minutes per game in Australia. He's a willing shooter for his size, but needs to improve, but he also has the tools to do so. He has a great handle for a big man, and he sometimes looks like a wing on the perimeter. Sarr is also a great defender who can switch onto multiple defenders. He was the favorite to go number 1 and most likely would have had he not canceled his workout with the Hawks. But going to Washington allows him to grow at his own pace with no real expectations to win. With the third pick, I have the Houston Rockets selecting Reed Sheppard from Kentucky. The 6'1 guard averaged 12 points off the bench for the Wildcats. He's pound for pound one of the best all-around players in this class. Sheppard is good or great at many areas in his game and is very smart overall. He shot 52% from 3 on 4 attempts per game. He's also a good defender for his size, but being only 6'1 at 182 pounds, he won't have much room to put on muscle, so his size may be a concern throughout his career. He also isn't a true point guard, but only 6'1, so shooting guard may be a difficult position to crack through as well. But this gives the Rockets a gritty guard who is polished already to help contend for a team with playoff aspirations. With the fourth pick, I have the San Antonio Spurs selecting Donovan Clingan. Clingan is a 7'1 lockdown center from UConn. He averaged 13 points, 7 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks with back-to-back national championships. Clingan has a 7'7" wingspan, and he's the best defender in this draft and will give an immediate impact for any team that drafts him. He's also a very good rebounder as well, but no real threat offensively. He didn't shoot threes in college and doesn't have many post moves in his bag. But leading up to the draft, he has shot threes in his workouts with teams. If he can add some type of skill offensively, he'll be one of the best picks in this draft. I have the Spurs taking them at 4 as they get their modern day version of Tim Duncan and David Robinson by giving Wemby a front court mate that is just as special as him defensively but in his own unique way. At pick number 5, I have the Detroit Pistons selecting Matas Buzelis from the G League Ignite. The 6'8 forward averaged 14 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Buzelis is a super lengthy forward who provides versatility on the ball. He has some finesse or some swag to his game offensively that will translate to the NBA. And he's also a very solid defender. But he has a very loose handle and had turnover issues this past season. His skinny frame can be a reason to these turnover issues. He has a frame to add some weight, however. And Buzelis also shot horribly from 3 this season in the G League with 27%. This could have been an anomaly as I think he's a much better shooter than he showed last season. The Pistons have a need at the forward spot and he can be an immediate starter all while having time to develop his game. With the 6th pick, I have the Charlotte Hornets selecting Cody Williams. The 6'5" wing from Colorado with a 7'1" wingspan averaged 12 points and shot 41% from 3. He's a younger brother of Thunder guard Jalen Williams. He's a very raw prospect that'll need some time to develop. Williams has a solid handle and uses length with his touch at the rim. He's also a good shooter but settle for jumpers too much at times. He has a very skinny frame. His strength might be his biggest weakness to start his career. He's 22nd on my board, so I'm not the biggest fan of his, but the Charlotte Hornets may buy into his potential and run a backcourt of LaMelo and Brandon Miller with Williams at the 3. At pick number 7, I have the Portland Trailblazers selecting Dalton Knecht. The 6'5" senior wing from Tennessee averaged 21 points and shot nearly 40% from 3. A true 3-level scorer and one of the most polished offensive players in this draft, he can score off the catch or off the dribble with great mechanics. Knecht is a super solid finisher at the rim and can play out of the post as well. He's not a good on-ball defender, even though he has the size to be at least average in that aspect. But taking him at 7 gives Portland a much-needed scoring presence. Even though he's an older prospect, I don't see that being an issue with a rebuilding team like the Trailblazers drafting him. With the 8th pick, I have the San Antonio Spurs selecting Stephon Castle. The 6'5" combo guard from UConn averaged 11 and 4. He has a great feel for the game and is a great playmaker in pick and rolls and transition. He's an elite on-ball defender, and with his size, it makes him even better. He's not a good shooter yet. He shot 26% from 3 last season, but showed flashes. Castle doesn't have a go-to for his scoring, so he's not that big of a threat on that side of the ball yet. He declined workouts for teams with the starting point guard. San Antonio is a perfect spot for him because he'll have an all-time coach with a franchise player next to him on a team with a dire need of a point guard. And even better, he'll be running it back with his college teammate Donovan Clingan. I had the Spurs taking Clingan at 4 because I feel like Castle will fall down the board to them at 8. At pick number 9, I have the Memphis Grizzlies selecting Ron Holland. The 6'5" wing from the G League Ignite averaged 15 points and 7 rebounds. Holland is a knockdown defender who's super explosive attacking the rim. He has a 6'11" wingspan, so he's able to switch onto multiple types of players. But he's not a good shooter off the catch. He shot 27% from 3 with some below average mechanics. He's more so a straight line or downhill driver and lacks creativity on the ball. But he'll be a solid fit for the Grizzlies, who are one of the best developmental teams in the league. Holland will still only be 18 on draft night, so his upside and potential will be there for many years. With the 10th pick, I have the Utah Jazz selecting Devin Carter from Providence. The 6'2" guard averaged 19 points, 8 rebounds, and 3.5 assists this past season. He's one of the best on-ball defenders in this draft. He's super harsh, gritty, and smart on that side of the ball. He has all the intangibles to be impactful on both sides of the floor. He cuts, grabs loose balls, and just all-around great hustle plays. Carter isn't really a true facilitator, but he can play make in other areas. He's somewhat uncoordinated and isn't super athletic, and has a very ugly or funky form, but still made 37% of his threes. Going to the Jazz is what I think is a younger and cheaper replacement for Colin Sexton, who I expect to be traded. He'll make a great and productive backcourt next to Keontae George. With the 11th pick, I have the Chicago Bulls selecting Tidjane Salon from France. The 6'9" forward averaged 9 points per game and is a very raw stretch forward that shoots a good amount of shots on the perimeter. He's a good mover off the ball and feel for the game in that area. He's also a solid finisher and plays above the rim, but not that good of a self-creator. He's a pretty decent off-the-ball defender, but not good at the point of attack. The Bulls might look to rebuild and trade guys like DeRozan, Levine, and Vucevic. Salon is still only 18, so he'll be able to grow in Chicago next to Patrick Williams and Kobe White. I have him ranked all the way at 29, but this is a project pick that the Bulls might make to fully commit to a rebuild. With the 12th pick, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder selecting Tristan da Silva. The 6'8" forward from Colorado averaged 16 points, 5 rebounds on 39% from 3. Silva is a very versatile offensive player who can score both from 3 and off the dribble. He's a polished prospect, which is obvious given him being 23 years old. Da Silva is a solid defender and can guard both guards and bigger guys in the front court. He's not super athletic or crafty with the ball in his hands though. But he's one of my favorite players in this draft, as I'm probably a little higher on him than other people. I have him going to the Thunder, which is a team that accelerated its process in rebuilding. They're now contenders after being the first seed in the stacked Western Conference, and Da Silva will give them some maturity at a position of need. With the 13th pick, I have the Sacramento Kings selecting Jacoby Walter from Baylor. The 6'4" combo guard with a 6'11" wingspan averaged 14.5 points last season. Walter is a very talented scorer who can play both on and off the ball. He can create for himself at all three levels and is very crafty and selective with his shots. He looks fairly skinny because of his long arms, but he's nearly 200 pounds with more room to grow. He's also a solid defender despite him being such a talented player offensively. Usually those guys who are passionate about their offensive game checks out defensively, but that's not the case with Walter. But he's not a great playmaker since he's never been the lead ball handler. He's more of a wing than a point guard. Going to the Kings gives them yet another offensive threat that can play off pin downs, horn sets, and actions led by Domantas Sabonis. With the 14th pick, I have the Portland Trailblazers selecting two-time National Player of the Year Zach Edey. The 7'3" center from Purdue averaged 25 and 12 in his senior season. Edey is the most notable player in this draft that's faced some heavy criticism despite dominating college for multiple years. He's nearly unstoppable on the block because of his size and strength. And he has a soft touch at the rim and was straightforward with his approach. A very underrated aspect of Edey's game is his IQ and feel for the game. He's a solid playmaker out of the post. People assume he won't be able to defend due to his size and speed, and that's a big concern. I can already picture teams throwing him in pick and rolls, and he'll struggle being switched onto elite guys on the perimeter. I have him going 14th to Portland because they can use him off the bench to back up Ayton and not really switch their approach offensively when he's in, and even potentially the Trailblazers can trade Ayton to stay young, get assets, and rebuild. With the 15th pick, I have the Miami Heat selecting Isaiah Collier. The 6'2", 205 point guard from USC averaged 16 points and 4 assists as a freshman. Collier is a very strong and physical point guard who is a wild player with the ball in his hands. He has good mechanics on his jump shot even though he shot in the low 30s on threes. He's also a good ball handler and creator for himself, but can be reckless at times and turn the ball over. The biggest compliment I can give him is how well he uses his size. Whether that's getting to the rim or creating shots on the perimeter, he uses his body to his advantage. Like I said, he's very prone to turnovers and has not shot the ball well in the past. He can be out of control, so learning how to play at his own speed will be his biggest priority entering the league. This can end up being a true Miami Heat pick because he has the potential to be a gritty player on both ends, and the Heat need another scorer who can create for himself. With the 16th pick, I have the Philadelphia 76ers selecting Rob Dillingham from Kentucky. The 6'1" point guard averaged 15 points and 44% from 3 on 4.5 attempts per game. Dillingham is the most dynamic and electric scorer in this draft. Despite his size, he's able to get off basically any shot he wants. He's a true 3-level scorer that can play both off the ball and off the dribble. He's super skilled out of the pick and rolls and can play make out of these actions. He passed out of over half of his pick and rolls, something that he'll need to do at an even higher rate in a heavy pick and roll game. His size will always be his biggest flaw. He's only 6'1" and 160 pounds. I don't know how much room there is to gain weight and muscle, but he's only 19, so he has some time. I don't think he'll be able to run an offense consistently for 82 games on a contender, but his best feature will be being able to play next to another ball-dominant guard, because with me having him going to the Sixers, Maxey will have the ball in his hands a lot. With the 17th pick, I have the Los Angeles Lakers selecting Jared McCain. The 6'2" guard from Duke averaged 14 points and 5 rebounds on 41% from 3 on nearly 6 attempts a game. McCain is one of the best shooters in this class who is very underrated at other areas of the game. He can shoot off screens, stationary off the catch, and even off the dribble from deeper than normal ranges. He plays at his own pace with the ball and is a very solid playmaker. Despite his size, he's a great rebounder and isn't scared to get dirty in the trenches with other front courts. He's not really the fastest player on the floor and isn't that crafty, so he might be limited with what he can do against better competition, but there will always be a role for a hard-working sharpshooter in today's NBA. I have him going 17 to the Lakers because they desperately need shooting around LeBron and AD and someone who just works hard and has the intangibles to be on a winning team. With the 18th pick, I have the Orlando Magic selecting Kyle Filipowski. The 6'10" power forward or center from Duke averaged 16 and 8 last season. Filipowski is a two-way big that can stretch the floor and play inside on both ends of the court. He's underrated on the ball and can be used as both the screener and ball handler in the pick and roll. I expect him to be very versatile in how he'll be used with his ability to shoot and his agility with his body. Teams can run him off screens and use him like a big wing or stretch four. He doesn't play through contact well, and with the physicality in the NBA, that can be a problem. I have him going to the Magic. In my opinion, he'll already be their most talented big on the roster and gives a team that was bottom 7 in three-point percentage and dead last in threes made per game some much needed shooting. With the 19th pick, I had the Toronto Raptors selecting Nikola Topic from Serbia. The 6'5" point guard averaged 14 and 5 assists overseas. Topic is my third-ranked prospect in this year's class, but I have him dropping all the way to 19 due to some unfortunate circumstances. He recently tore his meniscus in his knee, but regardless is one of the more polished players in this draft. He's a crafty floor general who can score inside the arc with his physical stature. He's a great decision maker and one of the best playmakers in his class. He's elite getting downhill and scoring at the rim, but a very inconsistent shooter with some poor mechanics. He's my personal favorite guard in this class, but I have him going to the Raptors at 19 to fill a huge need for youth in the backcourt. It might be a bad combination early on to pair him with another three-point liability with Scottie Barnes, but with the flashes Barnes showed this season with his jumper, as long as that develops, Topic should be productive while being led by another fellow Serbian and the Raptors head coach, Darko Rajakovic. With the 20th pick, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers selecting Bobby Klintman. The 6'8" forward from the NBL, but born in Sweden, averaged 10 points per game in Australia. Previously at Wake Forest, Klintman is a two-way forward that has all the tools to become super valuable on both ends of the floor. He's a switchable defender who uses his 6'11" wingspan to guard multiple positions. He's very athletic and has shown flashes creating on the ball for himself and his teammates. I see him as a plug-and-play guy right away on a fairly contending team. He has room to improve and his potential offensively is what makes this pick at 20 so intriguing. He's not elite as a perimeter scorer yet, but at some point I do see him drastically improving in certain areas. The Cavs are a team with one of the biggest needs at the 3, with Isaac Okoro not really panning out as a third offensively. This pick lets them try again with a similar skill set they're looking for. With the 21st pick, I had the New Orleans Pelicans selecting Khalil Ware from Indiana. The 6'11" center averaged 16 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks at a 42% clip from the 3. Ware is a very intriguing prospect and one of the biggest boom or bust players in this class. He has all the tools a team will want for a modern big man. He's an all-world athlete, can shoot, block shots, and switch on the perimeter. Ware has great mechanics on his jumper and has a chance to be very versatile as a screener in the pick and roll. You look at his stats and player bio and think he'd be a lock to be drafted in the lottery, but his biggest problem is his effort and focus, which has been questioned going all the way back to high school. He also doesn't handle physicality well and doesn't play through contact despite being 6'11" with a 7'4" wingspan. But the Pelicans need a center who is agile enough defensively and can sit on the perimeter to give Zion Williamson more space to get to the rim, and Ware is the best option for that at pick 21. I expect them to move on from Jonas Valanciunas, and this will be a great young asset to move forward with that decision. With the 22nd pick, I have the Phoenix Suns selecting Terrence Shannon Jr. from Illinois. The 6'5" guard or wing averaged 23 points as a senior. Shannon is a mature elite guard that has a chance to primarily play either on the ball or as a wing. He's a solid three-point shooter, but his best attribute is his craftiness on the perimeter. He's pretty streaky, however. When he's on, he's almost always the best player on the court, but when he's off, he can fizzle out and be somewhat irrelevant. Shannon is also not the best defensive guy. He's shown that he can carry the load for an offense, but that won't be necessary at pick 22 for the Suns with KD and Devin Booker next to him. They desperately need a point guard, and I think Shannon can turn into that during his rookie deal in the Suns' current championship window. With the 23rd pick, I have the Milwaukee Bucks selecting Baylor Shireman. The 6'6" shooting guard from Creighton averaged 18 points, 9 rebounds, and 38% from 3. Shireman is a prototypical role-playing wing that many NBA teams are looking for. He can shoot the ball extremely well off different actions and sets. He can handle the ball in certain situations, but it's not something a team will call on him to do. He's an overall high-level player who does all the right things. He's one of the best guard rebounders in the draft in this decade. He averaged almost 10 rebounds over the course of 4 years in college at 6'6", 200 pounds. He's not the greatest athlete and not the best point of attack defender, but not bad enough where he should be hunted every time down the floor. The Bucks could use him at 23 since their other wing draft picks haven't really panned out yet, and they have a huge need for some productive role players. He can be a spacer next to Giannis who can shoot off the catch when he drives and attracts multiple bodies in the paint. With the 24th pick, I have the New York Knicks selecting Johnny Furphy. Furphy is a 6'7" forward from Kansas who averaged 9 points and 5 rebounds as a freshman. He's one of the biggest risers and raw prospects in this class. He's great off the ball and moving in space. Playing off the catch is definitely a strong suit and something that can translate early on. In college, he did do a lot of things that most 4 and 5 stars don't do young in their career. He gave effort defensively, rebounded, and made smart decisions. He's also a solid finisher who has some upside in that area due to his size. He's not the best playing off the dribble and isn't the fastest or most athletic on the ball both offensively and defensively. Going 24th to the Knicks gives them another potential role player who Tiz will love to just plug and play early on while developing his game to become more polished. With the 25th pick, I had the New York Knicks selecting again Yves Missi from Baylor. The 6'10 center averaged 10 and 5 and nearly 2 blocks as a freshman. Missi is an athletic back-to-the-basket big who can play in the post, as a roller in pick and rolls, and in the dunker spot at the rim. But where he'll make his money early on is defensively. He's one of 3 elite big men defenders in his class and brings his own unique game on that end. He can play in nearly any defensive scheme. He protects the rim with his 7'2" wingspan, has the tools to switch on the perimeter, and play and help side on drives. He's also a very active rebounder and has a body to be useful in that way on day one. But he's not a threat at all shooting anywhere on the floor and at the free throw line. He also needs to be ready to play make out of the pick and roll because he will see bodies immediately off the catch. And defensively, he needs to become more disciplined. He's such a good shot blocker that he gets too excited on pump fakes, leading to foul trouble. With the Knicks potentially losing one of or both of their big men in Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson, they'll have a need at center and they value defense, something that Missi checks off. He has the potential to be ready day one for New York if one of those guys leave. With the 26th pick, I have the Washington Wizards selecting KJ Simpson. The 6-foot guard from Colorado averaged nearly 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists on 43% from 3 on 5 attempts. Simpson is one of my favorite guard prospects in this year's class. I have him ranked a little higher than the consensus at 16 because of his natural abilities offensively. He's a smaller guard, but his creation and creativity on the ball is ridiculous. He can make basically every shot on the floor, and combining that with his tight handle, he's one of the better isolation scorers in the draft. Even though he's 6 foot, he can be used moving off the ball and ran off pin downs, flare screens, and basically any other screen in the game. His shot mechanics are elite and lets him play both off the catch and off the dribble. He's not super explosive in the air, but he's very fast and electric with the ball. His knock of course is being undersized, but unlike Rob Dillingham, he does have some weight on him at nearly 190 pounds. And Simpson is not a terrible defender, but being that small, it's inevitable that he'll get targeted on that end. I have him going 26 to the Wizards. They badly need a spark in that franchise, and at 21 years old, Simpson can be that guy for one of the worst offenses in the league. And putting him next to Alex Sarr gives him 2 offensive threats that can start today for him. But this might make one of the more poor defensive backcourts in Simpson and Poole. But the offensive production is too good to pass up late in the first round. With the 27th pick, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves selecting Tyler Kolek. The 6'1" point guard from Marquette averaged 15 and nearly 8 assists on 39% from 3. Kolek is the best pure point guard in this draft. He's a mature and older pass-first point guard that's crafty for both his teammates and himself when he wants to score. He primarily attacks the basket and can get creative in the paint. His 3-point percentage suggests that he's a great shooter, but in game I've noticed that sometimes he's hesitant to shoot, even though he's shown the capability to. Something that with confidence and reps he should get more comfortable at, because he has all the tools to be a threat from 3. This is a guy you'll be very comfortable leading your team on the floor and running offense through, whether that's starting or off the bench with the second unit, and I have him going to the Wolves for this exact reason. Mike Conley is aging, and he's someone that does nearly the exact same things as Conley offensively, so it'll be a seamless transition when the vet goes to the bench and when he ultimately calls it a career. With the 28th pick, I had the Denver Nuggets selecting Deron Holmes II. The 6'9" center from Dayton averaged 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 blocks with 38% from 3. Holmes is hands down my favorite player in this draft. He's a big physical big man who is smart, can stretch the floor, and put the ball on the deck. He's best on the defensive side with his shot blocking though. He's probably neck and neck with Donovan Clingan in that aspect, but I think he moves a little bit better on his feet than a UConn big man. He has switchability on pick and rolls, something he'll need in today's NBA. On offense, he's excellent as a roll man and can finish well in traffic. Like I said before, he can stretch the floor after improving his percentage every year he was in college. The biggest question though is whether that shooting is real and can translate to the NBA. Holmes didn't really play against elite competition like the other prospects in his draft, but the talent is undeniable on tape. There's reports that he received a promise from the Nuggets after canceling all of his other workouts. They struggled when Jokic went to the bench this season. This is a great backup option for Denver, who hasn't really been able to figure out that part of their roster yet. They won't have to switch much up with him on the floor. With the 29th pick, I have the Utah Jazz selecting Carlton Carrington. The 6'3" point guard from Pittsburgh averaged 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists as a freshman. Carlton Carrington, or Bub, is a lengthy score-first point guard who flourished as a lead man in Pittsburgh. He has a good feel for the game and can get to his spots as well as anyone in his class. He's better in the mid-range than he is at the 3, but showed a willingness to shoot them with 6 3-point attempts per game, but only 32% this past season. He's a straight-up shot maker who gets shots up since it's his biggest attribute, but he fell in love way too much with the jumper in college and didn't put any pressure at the rim. He's not the strongest, so that can be a big reason why, but his handle is so good that he can get to the rim more. He's better on the ball than he is off it. He can't really play out the catch and is much more comfortable with the ball in his hands. He needs to get much better in that area, but he's still only 18, so he has a lot of time. I have the Jazz taking Carrington at 29. I'm not the highest on him as I have him much lower on my big board at 28, but this is someone I take a chance on in the late first round. Even though Utah has a decent amount of guards, this is a project they should be willing to gamble on. And with the last pick in the first round, I have the Boston Celtics selecting Justin Edwards. The 6'6" wing from Kentucky averaged 9 points on 36% from 3 as a freshman. Edwards struggled early on a stacked Kentucky roster, but as the year went on, he slowly found his feel for the game. He's more of a player off the ball, and he eventually found his jumper in the second half of the season. His mechanics are really smooth, but will have to develop more consistent numbers to be playable on a contending team. He's a solid cutter on a weak side and is athletic enough to play at the rim off the catch. He doesn't have a real strong handle, but has a one-dribble pull-up game that might translate to the league. Edwards has all the tools defensively with his 6'10" wingspan to become very reliable for a team that values defense like the champion Boston Celtics. He can switch 1 through 4 and has the potential to be a great 3-and-D wing if he develops a consistent jump shot. The Celtics built an entire team on 3-and-D wings. Edwards can come onto this team that doesn't need him to play immediately and take his time developing into a cheap role player that can find spot minutes over time. This draft is one of the most unique classes we've had in a very long time. There's no clear-cut star that's guaranteed to come out of this, but I see a lot of valuable players in the later part of the first round that can help contending teams. Draft night is always fun. Let's see how many picks I can get right. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.